8.7 Mutations. Key concept: mutations are changes in DNA that may or may not affect the phenotype. Remember, we learned that the genotype is what the genes say, and phenotype is the physical appearance of the organism. Some mutations affect a single gene, while others affect an entire chromosome. A mutation is a change in an organism's DNA. Many kinds of mutations can occur, especially during replication. Remember, this is when DNA is making a copy of itself. A point mutation substitutes one nucleotide for another. As you can see here, a normal sequence versus the point mutation. We've had one mutated base, and it will change the sequence of amino acids. Many kinds of mutations can occur, especially during replication. The other kind is a deletion. So when we take one single letter out, again, you can see it went serine asparagine, serine leucine. So we've deleted a base and it changed the sequence. Chromosomal mutations can affect many genes. Chromosomal mutations may occur during crossing over. Think way back to when we learned about meiosis. That was when we had crossing over, when we had all those chromosomes jam-packed into the nucleus. Chromosomal mutations may affect many genes, because remember, a single chromosome contains lots of different genes that code for different proteins. Gene duplication results from unequal crossing over. You can see here our left sock and our right sock are swapping places and they are not equal anymore. It's the equivalent of wearing one of those little short socks with a tall sock. Translocation results from the exchange of DNA segments between nonhomologous chromosomes. Translocation occurs. This is our first pair and that's our 17th pair. They accidentally switch partners, and that's not okay. Sometimes the mutations can affect the phenotype, but not always. Chromosomal mutations tend to have a bigger effect. We're talking about a lot more DNA. Some gene mutations change the phenotype. A mutation can cause a premature stop codon. A mutation can change protein shape or the active site, much like we talked about sickle cell anemia. And a mutation can change gene regulation. When we talk about protein shape and the active site, we remember that structure determines function. Some gene mutations do not affect the phenotypes. They can be silent. A mutation may occur in a non-coding region. Remember how I told you that we share 50% of our DNA with a banana? Well, some of that is non-coding regions. A mutation can affect the protein folding or the active site. A deletion is when the base is lost, and an insertion is when we add an extra in there. The frame shift is what we call that when we have a deletion or insertion, like we saw in the previous slide. A point mutation is where we have a substitution. If the point mutation changes the amino acid, it's called a missense mutation. If it does not change the amino acid, it's called a silent mutation. If a point mutation changes the amino acid to a stop, it's called a nonsense mutation. It's kind of like reading a sentence in a book and a period abruptly in the middle of a phrase. It wouldn't make sense. Therefore, it's called nonsense. Mutations that occur in body cells do not affect the offspring. Way back when, one of the famous scientists that we talked about was cutting tails off of mice, thinking that eventually, if he created enough tailless mice, their offspring would be tailless. Didn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. If something occurs to you in your lifetime, it's not going to physically occur in your offspring. Mutations that happen in the sex cells can be harmful or beneficial to offspring. Natural selection often removes those mutant alleles from a population when they are less adaptive. Remember, natural selection is the strongest will survive. The smartest, the strongest, the fastest, the best looking of the herd are the ones that are going to survive long enough to pass on their genetics. The slow ones, the not so bright ones, the not so good looking ones, they're the ones that are going to get picked off from the herd, and thereby their genetics are going to get booted out of the gene pool, which is a good thing because you want a healthy gene pool for the survival of the species. Mutations can be caused by several factors. Replication errors can cause mutations. That's one of the reasons that we worry so much about radiation. UV radiation, X-rays, cigarette smoke, any kind of smoke really, benzoyl peroxide, infectious agents such as the HPV, remember the herpes virus. All of those types of things can cause errors in the replication of your DNA. Mutagens can cause mutations such as UV rays and chemicals. Cancer drugs will actually use those mutagenic properties to kill cancer cells.